Hello, it's June 2022, and I briefly want to talk about something that ties into a previous video that I made, the truth about sex trafficking. And ultimately, the point I want to make in this video, I'm sure many people are going to get it, especially those who call themselves truthers. They're going to be like, yep, I get it, I 100%. And there's going to be probably many to most that either don't care or are oblivious. And I'm not here to try to wake anyone up because, as I've said many times over many years, you're not waking up anyone from any side, but I digress. So I want to start off by just quickly recapping sex trafficking and really what it is. And sex trafficking is slavery. It's a form of slavery. And we get into the term sex slave. And from there we hear about different kinds of kinks with sex slaves and all this other nonsense and whatever it is, right? But I want to really focus on slavery. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the true history on slavery and who's who and everything else. There are people way smarter than me on this topic, and I'm not going to try to recap everything, because for one thing, the people who are talking about this, the true history, well, they're more respected than I am. So anyway, and I'm going to leave links to what you see happening here down below, and I really recommend subscribing to Thomas Sowell. Very intelligent person. Now, I just want to sidetrack here for a moment. I don't put much value with intellectual types. I don't promote intellectual types, and in fact, I've talked about the cycles of civilization. When we hit the late stage of it, the intellectual types also rise, and they tend to cause a lot of issues socially. But I digress. And I'm not saying all, obviously, but I'm just generalizing here. So Thomas Sowell is a very intelligent individual, researched a lot on a lot of different topics, and that makes him well-rounded. But anyway, I digress. So slavery. Well, when we think of slavery, for example, and I'm just going to skim this as it ties in with the sex trafficking, has happened throughout history. Every group of peoples enslaved their own and enslaved others in history, today even, and it's going to continue again, like with the sex trafficking, to and ever. And part of that really has to do with some people's desire to control others, as well as to have an easier life and have whatever they want, for example, with sex. And that kind of individual are the ones that usually want to obtain various positions of authority. Again, I'm saying not all. And I just want to intersect here something very important that I'm sure that some of my viewers have missed. Keep in mind, and one, I have not saying anything bad about people in positions of authority. But remember, in my life, I was that type of person, for example, when I was younger, who almost became a police officer, and got sabotaged on me, and I talk about this in previous videos. And the path that I walk with in law, and going further than that, for example, meeting with the elite types of the world and so forth. I've talked about this in other videos, parting with very influential people of the world and learning things that most people think are conspiracies. So when I talk about people in various positions of authority, I'm, as a descriptive, pointing one finger at them, but I'm also pointing three back at me. And I've talked about this in another video dedicated that I get how these people think. Okay, so anyway, I'm totally off a tangent here. So we have people who want to control. Now we have slavery. And from this, we also have, whether it be sex slaves or just plain slaves, there's a monetary value to that. So there's a lot of different incentives that will ensure that any type of slavery is not going to go away. Now, here's something that a lot of people, as I said in the beginning, truther types especially, will get. And that is, everyone today is a slave. There's something called debt slavery. Invisible chains, invisible bars. You have the appearance of having freedom to choose whatever it is that you want to do on your, for example, your off time. But everyone's a debt slave. Now, one thing that a lot of people may not realize is when you work for example, a corporation, you get to pick and choose who your slave master is. But ultimately, it's all the same. And corporations are dictatorships. And I'm just going to segue real quick. All levels of government are corporations now. Just think about that anyway. All levels of government are corporations now. Just think about that anyway. So we have what is called the debt slave. And the more in debt you are, the more you're bound to your slavery. And some people have simply walked away from everything and they don't even care about the repercussions. Well, I'm not advocating for that at all, because from that there usually is some sort of hardship. But anyway, unless you do it, you plan it out or whatever. And this kind of segues into this whole freedom on the land, or free man on the land nonsense. And I get, and I've said repeatedly, I don't advocate for them, but I do get where they're coming from. They're tired, for example, of injustice and tyranny and being a slave. But if you're not a slave to one, you're going to be a slave to another, right? And this kind of segues into, for example, people who follow mainstream. They're drinking that flavor of Kool-Aid, whereas people in the alternative media, they're drinking a different flavor of Kool-Aid, but they're still being controlled and manipulated, right? But anyway, again, I've done videos on this topic as well. So debt slavery is the world today. And the people in control, it's their game. And this is key. This is a little, maybe a tidbit of a secret, what's really going on. The whole world's a stage. We're all actors here. The majority of the population are simply extras. So the people on the very top realize this, and they orchestrate everything, create everything that goes on, whether it be war, economics, you name it. It's all orchestrated. And I'm not saying events are not real. I'm just saying everything's orchestrated, whether they be real or not. And that's something that, I'm not really going to discuss. So they orchestrate this. Now, people who are drawn to various positions of authority, and again, you got to remember, I was one of them, or maybe I still am, but anyway, I digress. Basically, they're coming from the batch of the extras, and they don't want to be, as a descriptive, dumped on, or used, or put on a conveyor belt, for example, of conviction. So they want to rise above that for their own, for example, self-preservation, or their own success, whatever. And I remember talking to, years ago, a young guy, and he wanted to become, again, I'm not picking on cops, I'm just saying, he wanted to become a police officer. And I just asked him, just casually, like, why? And he said, it was a very interesting answer. He said, we live in a world where either you're dishing it out or you're on the receiving end of it. He goes, I want to be on the dishing out part. It's better that way, or something to that effect. And I just kind of stood there, like, looking at him like, okay, I mean, you're being honest, right? So this is why, another reason why a lot of people get drawn to that. Now, something very interesting, and even in Thomas Sowell had said that in today's world, a lot of people are going for example, in education, positions that will give them some sort of position of authority at some level, whether it be in a corporation, a business, a title, or whatever. And people are drawn to that because whether people realize it or not, and I'm sure most people don't who go that route, they don't want to be the one being told. They want to be the one telling. And now we get into micromanaging and all this other stuff. And I've talked about how governments were originally only ever established to create and maintain infrastructures, and then from there it just kind of snowballed into micromanaging everyone's lives, and then we get into the dumbing down of society and everything else. But I digress again. It all boils down to, we have people at the top, then we have the middleman, we'll call them, people in positions of authority, and then we have the rest, the debt slaves. Slavery has never left us, nor will sex slaves ever leave us. And it's unfortunate, but it's reality. Anyway, hopefully this inspires some thought, gives you something to think about. Maybe you learn something, I don't know. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow or fail. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me all the time, when is it going to get easier? When you die.